Greetings, Race community. Brent coming in live with an extra special guest. That's right, it's my new colleague, Beebe. Welcome, JD.
Thank you, Brent. Should I say Brett? No, Brent.
Brent is my name, and you are JD, and you and I recently merged our companies along with your founding team and our leadership team, and it has been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks as we did our launch ad, if you will. We did our launch party, which I know many of you all listening participated in. And while it might feel like it's been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks, it's actually been a whirlwind of about a year of you and I sort of brainstorming this and catching up nights and weekends. And so it feels pretty amazing to be at this point and to be able to welcome you as a guest on your own podcast, technically now.
Oh, well, thank you.
How about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. No, it's very exciting. You've done a bang up job with this podcast, and I am flattered and eager to be on it. Well, once again, but this time as partners, and obviously so many great things ahead of us. I'm just excited to get the show rolling.
Well, we're going to dive into kind of the backstory on how this merger came about, why we're so excited, and so forth. But honestly, everybody's heard a lot about that the last couple of weeks. So we're gonna start by here's why I'm excited. One, I know we got a bunch of our new colleagues, listening to this right now. We have spent a lot of time together over the last year plus, and over the last 6 years in the vendor circuit in the advancement space. And especially over the last 6 months as we brought the companies together. But in spite of that, I still need to get to know you better. And so I want to go back in time to Ridgefield High, home of the Tigers. Oh. And I want to know about JD Beebe, junior year of high school. Who was that guy? What was he into? And ultimately, what was your path to Boston University?
Oh, Lord, bringing me back. And I'm back in my hometown of Ridgefield now. So I'm reminded of some of the fun and stupidity that I partook in that junior year. Let's see, my junior year, I was a rambunctious scamp in high school. I played a lot of different sports. I think I was on the swim team, the soccer team, the rowing team, which I went to another town to go on the rowing team, track and field, snowboard. What did I do? I was involved in a lot of different sports. I don't know if it was my junior year, but I did spend a year, and I'm not sure why. I think I saw Method Man on TRL. This also dates me because that's something I don't think some people will know on this podcast. But Method Man, I saw him chewing on a toothbrush once on TRL, and I said, "That's cool." So I spent a year with a toothbrush in my mouth. So I became known as Toothbrush Boy for a bit. So I had very clean teeth during that time. It was just kind of a fun thing. I also had I don't know if the hair was down to my shoulders at that point, but it was getting there. Yeah, I enjoyed school. I really loved what I was doing, but it was, as a lot of people in high school, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I liked being creative. I liked the arts. I liked coming up with dumb ideas with my friends. And lo and behold, I would go on to, post Boston University, start doing silly things with one of my buddies, Keith Maneri, who.
But tell me about going to Boston University and studying advertising, which does seem like the perfect foundation for all the creative, crazy things you've gone on to do. And, I don't think I knew what advertising was as a major. Like, I don't think it was a major. I didn't know about it. This was probably like Mad Men, when I feel like that whole scene really was exposed to by way of the show. And so, did you know that that's what you wanted to study when you got to BU? Was it easy to pick BU in the first place? And just kind of what was that early first second year of college like?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not even sure how I was similar to you. I didn't even know advertising was a thing until I expressed, what's JD planning on doing with his life? And my parents kind of shared it, and they said, "Oh, well, advertising seems like the right avenue for him. You get paid to come up with silly ideas. He likes writing. He likes, designing things." So that was the extent that I knew. I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting enough. That's a career path I'd like to do. Those are the things I like doing." So I did know I wanted to go to a communication school. So I ended up looking at the Fordhams, Ithacas, BUs, places that had a good communication college or practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in and I just like watching movies. So I thought I was going to be like, oh, I'll do a film advertising major. And then I did some of those early film classes and I realized this is not for me. I'm just not into watching Andy Warhol movies of someone just staring at a screen for 25 minutes. Just not my pace, a little too ADD. But the advertising circuit really did start kind of delivering on what I was hoping. It allowed you to think strategically, think critically, use humor, use insights, observations to be able to communicate. And I just really enjoyed the process. I also I think it was really interesting because at BU they had a program called Ad Lab. I believe they still have it, where you're actually assigned to real organizations, real businesses around the Boston area that need help with their advertising. So I think the mix of, kind of this higher level thinking, but actually boots hitting the ground and actually having a business outcome, I think that's always been really interesting to me. I like doing things and then seeing the effect of what that has to do. And having been kind of self-employed since I was 7 years old, my dad whipped up Beebe Brothers business cards. I think having a creative idea that then leads to a business outcome was just always very enticing to me. So BU set me up with that.
I feel like if TikTok were around when you were a junior in high school as Toothbrush Boy, I feel like you'd have a lot of followers.
I did, and I did have that that quintessential like teenage boy like flop, like hair flop. So yeah, would have been the full package back then. I just missed my mark. Oh well.
You're doing okay. So you also did a stint on the rowing team at BU. Tell me about those early mornings on the Charles River.
Whew. They were early, and to think about it now, I wonder how in the heck anyone does it, let alone an idiot freshman. But 4:30, we were up, we were on the water. We were at the boathouse by 5:15, out on the water by 5:30. Rowing, for those who have done it, it's kind of a masochistic thing, not only physically but also just mentally. And if you think about it, there's not really. It's a sport with a very short time span. There's really no professionalness to it. You either are big enough and you go to the Olympics every 4 years, and then that's it. But I'll say from a character building, from a making you determined, kind of helping you build grit and also just build self-character of almost kind of realizing like you're not the biggest thing in the world because your pain is shared by these 7 other guys that are in this boat with you. I think it was hugely important to kind of the person I became, not only from the friendships that you make, the people that you're spending these hours and hours basically just in pain together, but to realizing what it means to be part of a team that, being in lockstep and giving it your all, that's what leads to the best outcomes. So I loved it. And, there's nothing like when you're coming in after a long row and the fog is just coming up off the water on the Charles and it's nice and flat when that, the few times that happens. It's just one of those images that gets baked into your brain and you never forget it.
I say this frequently because people will say, hey, we know you played football in college. That must have been a really big time commitment, which it was. But I have this memory that I will never forget, where we would be walking into our winter workout practices, just kind of trudging our way to the gym for the 6:30 a.m. start before our full day of class. And the crew team would be leaving the facility because they were already done with practice. Yeah. And it always made me sort of, I guess it made me feel a little bit less sorry for myself after seeing like truly the level of commitment and just the sheer, like getting up at 4:30 in college is no joke. So you're having that experience at BU. You're liking that intersection of creative and business. Mm-hmm. And you do a couple of interns. You do a stint at KHIZ TV in LA. Any good memories? I mean, LA TV, that's kind of like,
it was
pretty cool when you're in college.
So that was through a consulting group that I met that was a bunch of ex-Harvard guys that had a consulting firm right there in Cambridge. Cambridge Square? No, what's the square? Harvard Square, I guess. It's
Yeah.
right over there in Cambridge. And they had me doing everything under the sun. I was an accountant for a bit. I was writing scripts. I was doing graphics, you name it. The big thing about that station was out in Victorville, California. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
Not yet, but it's on the list now.
It's the high desert. So I think the most fun thing I did was we had this concept for the high desert action news squad, which was, very much kind of having a tongue-in-cheek Anchorman style news squad that would go out and report on kind of all the happenings of Victorville, which no offense to those that are in Victorville, it's just there's not a ton going on up there. It's just very hot.
It is the home of the California Route 66 Museum, though.
Well, there you go. Well, that's when I said hot. It's very hot there. It's the hottest thing in town.
Got it.
That was fun. Yeah, and that group, shout out to Peter White and Garrett Law that kind of gave me my first real job. So love that.
And so you graduate in 2007.
Yep.
And it seems like the kind of entrepreneurial, I mean, you were doing side hustles before side hustles were cool, basically. And it's clear that you got very connected and engaged with, I mean, advertising was, and still is, but really at that time, it was going through a massive disruption, right? A massive transformation from, Mad Men to digital. You couldn't have been in college at a better time to sort of see some of that transition happening. And it led you to throw your kind of hat in the ring early on as it related to the internet and getting involved in some niche websites, for example. And so tell me a little bit about bejustinbieber.com,
You've done your research.
And just like, what was the catalyst to throw up your first website? And really, when I look at this, like the way that Wayfair started, like Wayfair, which has obviously become this dominant, e-commerce provider, is originally they just had a whole host of niche websites that they bought up, and they owned SEO. And so it's like if you Googled, hat racks, that you were going to land on like hatracks.com, and it was like technically owned by something called CSN Stores, which then rebranded and became Wayfair. But back in the day, it was just a whole bunch of websites. And when I look at hangoverbeard.com and bejustinbieber.com, it feels like you were kind of in that early Wayfair zone. What do you think?
It's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about Wayfair. But yes, there was a time before you could even just be a seller on Amazon because they weren't doing that yet. I remember almost getting into selling those big Bierstein boots. Like selling lederhosens. There was one point where I was trying to sell basketball hoops because the same thing, because you had all these niches and you said, well, what's got the SEO? Who's your competition? How do I drop ship this thing? Or, how do I get?
And we just went through Halloween.
Yes.
And it sounds like you had some real Halloween expertise as it related to SEO. So walk us through the Halloween hits.
Sure. So that started with the Hangover beard. So for anyone remembering the Hangover movies, Zach Galifianakis had that big bushy beard. I said, man, everyone's going to want to be Zach Galifianakis for Halloween. I had the feeling, whipped up the website, WordPress blog, PayPal buttons, nothing to it. But I really took advantage of some of the early iterations of Twitter when there was a lot of third-party integrated tools that could really allowed you to do a lot more than you could do today. So basically, I would preset all these canned responses so that anytime someone mentioned Zach Galifianakis, Hangover, Bradley Cooper, whatever it might have been, they would get this kind of auto-tweeted kind of surly response from the Hangover beard, which was kind of this, this frustrated, angry beard character that I came up with. And that just started to propagate, and people started really interacting with it. That got the attention of LA Times, MTV started writing about it. And that started the ball rolling on that business where I started, sold one beard, I sold 10 beards, and I sold 100 beards. It just kept going. And I said, holy moly, this could be its own thing, which then led the next year to be Justin Bieber, Snooki Poofs from the Jersey Shore, Kardashian hair. So I focused mostly on wigs because it's just one size fits all, which which is always good when you're talking about inventory. And through that, I did end up meeting the guy who owned HalloweenCostumes.com at one point. So I met some Halloween celebs. I went to the Spirit Halloween, their showcase center in New York City. Got to see all the new costumes for I forget what it was, 2012. Yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
Unreal. And so when you think back to the lessons learned, because what I do love about entrepreneurship, and for anybody listening, well, first of all, just walk us through the process. Like, did you started with the solution, which is the world needs hangover beards available easily through the internet. And then the world needs Justin Bieber gear, and then needs Snooki gear. So you didn't necessarily do a lot of market research to identify a problem. You just went to it with high conviction. But what was the actual, like, what's the supply chain? A lot of talk about supply chain these days.
Sure.
So what was the supply chain to stand up, the hangoverbeard.com?
So I think you're giving me even too much credit for thinking the world needs X. It was more, hey, this would be fun. So I've always taken the approach of baby step your way into a reality. And there's, this idea of sunken cost that I just, at a certain point, if you go into it for it having to be a success, then you're going to be disappointed when it's not. If you go into it as this is going to be a fun thing, and I'm scratching an itch that I want to see how many other people are also willing to scratch. So with Hangover Beard, I made the website, WordPress, free WordPress site, whipped up a few PayPal buttons, had fun with the copy, and then and I found a beard. I had ordered a beard to actually a number of them just to see which one I liked the most. And then I Googled, how do I become a reseller? And turns out you got to fill out some paperwork, it's at town hall, go down, you fill that out. Suddenly now you can purchase things in bulk. So it was just, and at a certain point, then how do I create an LLC? What do I do with sales tax? This or that. All that was learned on the fly. I did not feel like, hey, I need to know every single one of these items before I start. I just kept going down the road, and as it became more and more successful, and I was like, wow, this can be something I can dedicate more time to. Then I invested more in learning about it. And that got to a full-blown place where by the third year, we were designing costumes in Shenzhen, China. We were learning the import business. I was learning how to negotiate with manufacturers. So, I mean, again, you'd be surprised how fast things can ratchet up if you find interest and success.
I mean, this is just like, it's the best experience, because you do get forced to learn all of these things that when you hear, getting your sales tax set up as a 20 something, like that sounds, like the,
no thanks,
whatever, black magic. And it's, you can figure it out though. And it's funny, my brother, who is 7 years younger than me, went to Brown. And when he was there, he started Brownopoly, where he just made a Brown version of the Monopoly board game. He got like the university rights to use like their image and likeness. And then he found a manufacturer in China and like sold them at the bookstore. For like, there probably still a few at the bookstore, but it sounds like a pretty similar experience. And that being said, this wasn't the only thing you were doing at the time. I just want to like highlight, like, this truly was a side hustle. And so your day job at the time is in the agency world, at the forefront of this transformation to digital advertising, but I'm sure still getting a big window into traditional advertising. And so it had to be a super interesting period, almost like being at working with a publisher that makes textbooks. And it's like, how do we sort of both be online and digital, but also not sort of disrupt our current business? And so what was it like? Tell me about Goodby Silverstein and Partners. What kind of the takeaways were there?
That was, I can't shout out enough everyone that was at Goodby, who's still at Goodby, who's part of that journey. I think in terms of advertising, if we look back at the history of advertising, I feel like I was at like the hollowed ground at the best time you could possibly be there, because to your point, Goodby was always pushing the envelope. They knew they were masters in like the old craft in commercials. Got Milk, I'll just leave it at like, that's the, if you ever saw the Got Milk, they're the Goodby guys. They were funny. They were smart. They were some of the most intelligent people, creative people. excited, hungry people all working at the same place. A fun little fact: when I left, the rapper that would go on to become Little Dicky took my job. So this is the kind of caliber of people that were working there. This kind of creative, confluence of people. It was the best education I could have gotten, because you everything that the internet allowed for, everyone at our company was breaking. They were like, every single thing you thought you could do with the internet, they were kind of turning it on its head. So that just got me exposed to thinking it's like there is nothing off limits. You can really kind of dream things up. And being in San Francisco at the time, we also had access to the startups, which, again, if you think back 2007, 2010, that's really when, I was writing blog articles back in the day about, like, is Facebook going to overtake MySpace? Who knows? And I was, looking at the graphs, and that got me started too, of realizing the way to level up in my role was to just get really eager and excited and learn as much as I could about kind of the changing world around me, which led me to found this blog that I wrote, I think somewhere in the range of 12 to 1,500 articles, New Antisocial, which was just more or less me learning about the digital transformation, which, thank God I did that, because that got me from a role that I was quite poor at to move over to the digital strategy, or the media strategy side of the house, to eventually become the director of social media, which was great because I was an account manager for a while. I'm not terribly organized, so that saved me from myself.
And so you're kind of climbing the ranks, I'm sure, working like crazy, also doing the side hustle, and just trying a bunch of things. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on at this point in your career. And just tell me about some of the additional stops before ultimately you founded Thankview. And maybe we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about noise marketing, because I know that was an important
Yep.
Kind of inflection point. And then, of course, we need to talk about Beebe's Butt Camp. So let's start with noise.
I'd be most remiss there. Yeah, I after Goodby made a short stop at Saatchi & Saatchi in LA, where I became a writer. Eventually became a creative, officially, professionally a creative, where I was a writer, which that was the first. I'd say that was a monumental point in my own life, of kind of always thinking I was this person, but never being fully affirmed as this person. So to join the creative team that did worlds of good in my own personal life, that led me on to work at Noise, where I became a creative director. I met Jerry Bai, my now co-founder and CTO, and I had gone to Noise specifically to meet a Jerry, to meet my the folks that would build the things that I wanted to build and build together, because a lot of agencies, they third party that out to another group. So you will put the concept together, then it'll get shipped off to Stockholm, and they'll go build some cool thing, and you'll never meet the people who made it. Was able to do that. Worked on some really fun, fantastic brands there. But by that point, I'd actually gotten that job because of my side projects. And I think the side project at the time that was really making its way around town was, well, there were two. One, Goodby, unfortunately, had to let a number of people go, about 75 people go, because in advertising you lose an account. That's just how the game works, and people get let go, unfortunately. So I made a website called Grab Some Goodby, which essentially, if you were let go, I asked for 5 pieces of information. I put everyone on a single website, which I built on a Tumblr site. Again, it was free. Got about 75 people on there, tons of interest driven to it, and within a month, I think 50% or more of them had already gone back into a job. And these were people that were thinking they were going to have to leave San Francisco, and now they were getting job offers at Apple. And so it was fantastic there. So that was making the rounds. And then it was around Valentine's Day, and I made a website called Hammogram.com, talking about Mad Men, where I would make love notes, written from the desk of handsome man John Hamm, who played Don Draper, and sold a few thousands of those. That was on the front page of a bunch of newspapers. And then it turns out you can't do that. So John Hamm's lawyers reached out with a cease and desist and said, stop doing that. And so I did. But that kind of opened the door to get me at Noise. And that at that point at Noise, I became this creative director. I started kind of seeing what it took to run something that was much larger than kind of a side hustle. And then realizing kind of, there was a lot I didn't know, but I knew enough to feel, hey, I could do this. So at a certain point, that allowed me to jump off. And I actually took New Antisocial, which was previously my blog, turned that into an advertising agency when we won the business of Spartan Race. And I won some Intel business and a handful of other clients. The guy who would go on to do the Fire Fest, he was a client for a bit. That's a story for another time. I won't say too much incriminating stuff on this one, but that led us to start New Antisocial, which again, it kind of started feeling like a snowball because we had a gym client who didn't like ClassPass, which was a thing at the time where you could pay one rate and get into all these different studios. That made me interested in ClassPass. I'd gone to a Barry's boot camp. My last name's Beebe. I said, let's do Beebe's butt camp. I know nothing about working your butt out or exercise generally, but again, found an instructor, Jasmine, on Craigslist. She was fantastic. And we just took it one step at a time. And within 4 months, we had a studio space with 2 classes. By its height, we were 22 classes a week. Second highest rated studio in New York City on Yelp. Just having a heck of a time. I became an instructor. I was teaching 5 classes a week in great shape. Yeah, I mean, I look back at that time very fondly. It was just a lot of fun.
There's a remarkable common thread here of you basically hacking SEO. And when I say hacking, I don't mean like breaking into it, but just like finding tricks related to SEO. I mean, basically you hacked SEO to sell beards. You hacked it to create a marketplace for your former colleagues in a certain regard. And then within ClassPass, you hacked it because the B was at the beginning.
Well, it was actually 2 zeros. So it was
2 zeros.
Like so it was the alphanumeric first thing in New York City.
Got it. And so you were literally the first thing that showed up on ClassPass and then became one of the top classes. And in a similar instance, even with Beebe's Butt Camp, you basically, you didn't build anything yourself. You sort of assembled these different pieces that existed. You didn't manufacture beards yourself, but you found things that existed and sort of packaged it up. Mm-hmm. And it's for sure a recurring theme in what had been this just genuinely entertaining, but also very educational boot camp into into the world of advertising and business.
Absolutely.
And so, of course, given everything you've shared from Ridgefield Tigers through Beebe's Butt Camp, this, of course, leads you to wanting to found the leading gratitude video messaging donor engagement platform in the nonprofit space. We've been on this path all along.
I know. All roads were leading me here.
Obviously, you went to found Thankview after this. No, explain, another recurring theme, like let's throw some things against the wall and see what sticks and then decide where to go from there. Yep. And I know your founding story at Thankview. You've shared it quite a bit, although you always share it in like one sentence. You say, I started Thankview because I didn't want to handwrite my wedding thank yous, basically.
Yep.
That is too quick of you don't start a company or build a product just so you don't have to handwrite wedding notes. Or maybe you do, but like really truly walk me through. Like you got married, you're sitting with your wife Liz one night and you're like, hey, I should start a video platform because I don't want to get through this list of things. I mean, tell me the truth here. What are we talking about?
It's more than one sentence, but I don't know if it would even make a whole paragraph, quite honestly. I mean, you have to think about it this time. Like so Keith and I, again, high school friends, just consummate schemers. Again, I think we often don't think deeply enough about how hard things are going to be, or how insurmountable certain things are, and then we just give it a go, and sometimes it works out. But we were in a point where we were such in the creative mindset. We would come in every day to work and there'd be 5 new ideas. We got this, and this. And we would just spend the first half of the day just going through the ideas that were like, maybe we could try this, maybe we could try that. Like, believe me, there's a laundry list of businesses to start. If anyone's interested, I got a whole list for you. But at that point, there were a handful of ideas that I was really into, And again, I think it was like this idle hand syndrome. You know, we had the new antisocial that was taking up a lot of time. I was running around town with Beebe's butt camp. That was taking a lot of time. It was almost because I was so busy. It was like, oh, I might as well be more busy. So, and one thing I will give credit to a lot of my friends was when I have ideas, I like to circulate them. I don't like holding them close. I like kind of getting feedback and what do you think about this? And I had a whole slew of concepts at the time. One was kind of like a dating concierge site that could set up these very, thoughtful, bespoke dates for you. Because I'm a terrible, I don't set dates very well. I'm just a bad date setter with my wife, so I could use the service myself. But a lot of my friends were saying that Thankview thing, I think there's legs there. I think that's what you should pursue. So it really was, let's build the prototype. At that point, Jerry had been at a number of different places. He had done some project work for us, so he had built some sites, some microsites for us. He really wanted to work with us. It was kind of have to say no to him twice and then yes the third time. It was like, Jerry, we can't afford you. You're way too good. But I have this idea, and if you like it, you're a quarter of it's yours, and you can start today. And pitched him, and he said yes. So that's really, we kind of went into it of saying, let's invest a number of months and some of the money we've saved up from these other things to give it a go. Because I should also mention, we've done a lot of projects that were complete failures too. Like not everything's a hit. There's a lot of stinkers. So we're no strangers to just wasting money, losing money. So we were prepared for it to not work, but we built a product. It worked like gangbusters. I tried to get every one of my newlywed friends to use it. I used it. I thought it went great. But when we didn't start seeing the traction there that we wanted, that we felt comfortable with, because we always kind of think it's like we're swinging on a vine and you don't want to let go of the one vine you're on to jump to the next if you don't know what's going to be there. So we weren't confident in saying no to the business we had with New Antisocial and the fitness studio until we started trying to sell to. I started trying to get every other fitness studio using Thankview because I was using it at Butt Camp. So every time you come to class, you get a video from me afterwards saying, "Hey, thank you so much. Here's a referral link. Send it with your friends." And it was working great. So we pivoted a bunch to try to find something. And it wasn't until I made a donation to Boston University and they sent me a bookmark eventually. And I thought, man, wouldn't this be cool if the student sent it and kind of circulated that with Keith and the team? They were kind of like, yeah, that could work. Like, what the hell? We have nothing else to lose. So through some help of my deans, I asked for the donation department, which we know is not a thing. It's the advancement department. And went up to Boston, pitched to a big room of people. And their reaction was so immediate that, you ask like, this is what, how'd you get into this space? I had no idea this space existed until that meeting. And then I left that meeting saying, this is what we're doing. And it took us a little bit of time to all full come around to that. But, thank God we did, because this is absolutely the place we were meant to be.
I love it, man. It's so fun to hear those origin stories. And I've heard yours a number of times, but not to that full extent. And it is another example where you didn't invent thank yous. You didn't invent video. Mm-hmm. You didn't invent, email distribution. But you did find a niche that was really ripe for digital transformation and innovation, the same way that the advertising space was a decade before. And, I know you didn't foresee this, being a pivot from Beebe's Butt Camp into the leading donor engagement solution, but here it is. And yeah. What you did do incredibly well, and I started seeing this when we first met at a conference in Pittsburgh, is once you made that pivot and once you saw that this stuck to the wall in a big way, you did stay laser focused in this vertical. And even though you didn't know anything about it, you really became a student of the vertical. You surrounded yourself with great advisors who knew everything about the vertical. And I think that allowed you to build a really, really authentic brand and a compelling product, even though it wasn't maybe your life's work up until that point. And so tell me about that early education process. Once you met with BU, and then I think you met with Boston College and you decided this was going to be it. How did you surround yourself with people that would help be that sounding board and get you up to speed as fast as you were moving in the nonprofit fundraising space.
Yeah, and well, first of all, you couldn't have put it better yourself. I couldn't put it better myself. I think it was, once realizing that this was an audience, then it was just, being as having as much humility as possible and going into every situation, just being prepared to not know the answer. And I think one thing that, and a reason why I've loved working with this audience specifically, fundraisers, university advancement, is everyone's so nice and everyone's like very much wants to teach you. It's not a place where information is withheld. There's this idea of the haves and have nots.
Different vibe than the New York advertising scene. I mean, same vibe, different vibe. I mean,
a little bit different. I mean, listen, I think people are genuinely pretty nice everywhere, but I'd say university fundraisers and fundraisers in general just tend to be like over index on the goodness scale. And really just became about, I have an idea. We've demonstrated that it has application for what you're doing, but I have no other idea beyond that. Like, you now tell me, I know how to send personalized videos. Now what else? Like, what do you need, and what's going to work for you, and how's your team structured, and what is the difference between donor relations and annual giving? And even once one thing, especially being out on the conference circuit with you and others, was even though I would know the answer, I would often pretend that I didn't, to ask people, well, oh, I'm in university advancement, or I'm in the annual giving team, because also what one person means at one university is not what they mean at the other. So I just really made it a point to never assume that I knew the answer about what anyone did, or what mattered to them. And ultimately, that just, when you just ask people questions and don't assume you know the answer, they're very forthwith with telling you about it, which then I think after having those conversations hundreds or thousands of times, you start to understand in aggregate, okay, here's what I'm trying to do and here's who I'm trying to help, versus I have the idea, I have the laser vision, I know exactly what you need. It's much more, tell me what you need and let me synthesize that 1,000 times and try to give you what I think you're saying to me.
When you think about the first couple of years of the company, what are some of your favorite memories? One thing that I've heard and have definitely experienced that one is culture tends to be formed pretty early, and it's sort of the hardest thing to change. You can always change the product roadmap, really hard to change the culture, hard to change how people treat each other and so forth. And I am curious, when you think about those early years, just any traditions or things that you look back on fondly that maybe aren't exactly the same way today, but you can still see the kind of fingerprints of some of those early traditions on the current team and culture.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've had such like a fun group of people, and it's always like, I'll say that the thing I'm always reminded of is just like, I've always had a lot of fun, and it's tougher because we're not in person now, but just the amount of laughter and jokes and sometimes stupidity that happens near the end of the day. It's like it was very rare that I'd come home in a bad mood. And I'd say things like, we used to do huzzahs when the team was smaller. So once a month, someone got the opportunity to present or kind of do a presentation or some sort of event that they had organized. So I think about the day where we did a scavenger hunt around New York City in the polar vortex. That was quite cold, but quite fun, because there's some weird elements to it that I won't go into. But there was that. We had murder mystery parties. We had eating cuisines from Haiti and Puerto Rico, and drinking wine from places that their families grew up in France, and trying to recreate the artwork of the masters using color pencils. There's just a lot of fun things that we did. And in a similar vein, we had a teammate who's since moved on to a new opportunity, but she used to make these bizarro birthday videos. Every single birthday she would, and it's not even worth describing them because they're almost like hallucinogenic at times, but they were just so funny and so weird. And that just kind of laid the groundwork of you can be weird, you can be yourself here. It's, we're doing serious things, but you don't have to take yourself seriously, which I think is a theme that's run through almost everything that I've done and Keith and I have done together, where it's we have to, like, you have to have a good time to have good times with others. And I just think, every teammate basically embodies, you could take anybody and throw them into a new situation. They're going to infuse it with that Thankview fun.
I love it. We've definitely felt that in the last couple of weeks collaborating with our new teammates. And you've mentioned Jerry and how, part of your reason for taking the job was to meet a Jerry, and you met Jerry and you went and did exactly what you hoped you would do once you met a Jerry. You've referenced Keith a couple of times. Tell me a little bit about Keith, your history, and what Keith has brought to the Thankview brand.
Oh yeah. So Keith and I have known each other. We have different memories of when we met each other, but I'd go with Keith because he tends to have a greater. Keith will remember exactly what he wants to remember down to the last hair. But then I'll mention someone from high school. It's like, hey, remember that guy? And he's like, no, I don't think I've ever heard that person's name. So for things he does care about, I'd take his story. We've been friends since ninth grade. We ended up both going to school in the Boston area together. Then he went over to London. I was over in London around the same time. They were both out in California around the same time. So we've been friends, and we've been friends in proximity for a really long time. And when I got him a freelance gig with Noise and eventually hired him as an art director at Noise, that already I was like, this is great. Like now I'm working, I have multiple friends here and we're doing great things together. But once we kind of jumped ship to go start our own thing, I mean, like any partnership, it's had its ups and downs. I'm not going to sugarcoat that we haven't wanted to strangle each other every once in a while. But ultimately, Keith is just one of those those creative powerhouses where he can do so much and is so thoughtful. And I think he brings oftentimes maybe where I maybe will lose the thread on the fun or be a little bit too serious about business. Will kind of remind saying, hey, the fun is also how we got here. So I'd say that both of Keith and Jerry, they've been really important. And I think just as partners helped when one of us might be blind to something, kind of, the other two showing, hey, let's not forget the fun. Let's not forget about the people. Let's not forget about each other. So yeah, I mean, I love Keith and Jerry.
I mean, I have really enjoyed getting to know them. And as we've discussed, I had two co-founders, and it's been, many years since they left. And as we've been working on this merger, it's almost felt like we're sort of co-founding a new company, or like the new chapter, and being able to, work on this with you and also with Jerry and Keith. It's just been really invigorating to kind of, feel like we are sort of starting something new, obviously with the foundation. And we do know something about the industry, and we know a lot of amazing people who will help point us in the right direction. So it feels like our odds should be much better this time around. But ultimately, I still think it's that balance of being a really genuinely fun, mission-driven place to work that still asks customers what they do in the annual fund, even though we might feel like we really know, like we might not know about your annual fund or your job at your annual fund. And like, how do you sort of bring that sort of genuine interest and curiosity, even when you've told the story about not wanting to handwrite your wedding notes 1,000 times. And I've told my story about volunteering for Brown and being captain of the football team 1,000 times. And it's like, how do you still do it with the same level of energy and enthusiasm? And I will say that from where I sit, being able to come together with your team in pursuit of an even bigger vision, in pursuit, I think, of truly transforming the sector. If we get this right and we listen and we stay connected to the customers, it's not that we don't have the resources or the people. We have all of that. We know what the problems are. It's really just going to be a continued, evolution of how we put all that together. And it's just been very, very energizing to feel like we could leave a lasting mark on the space if we do right by our teams and by our customers.
Well, I have gotten the same energy off of you, and I can see I know you're still jazzed up after the 1,000th time telling your story, and I can tell that, just this combination, I don't see you losing one iota of energy, and certainly I'm more energized than I've been in a long time. So this is, blue skies ahead.
All right, good vibes. So we have not talked about how to use Thankview or what our integration plans are going to be and the product roadmap, and we will have countless opportunities to share all of that. And I think the purpose of the podcast is more just genuinely getting to know people. That being said, when you think about the space, when you think about the role that video in general, Thankview specifically, has played 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when we're doing, another episode of this podcast, what change do you expect to see in the next 3 to 5 years? A lot of the folks listening to the Raise podcast are innovating. They are pushing. They do want to really be at the forefront of the change in this sector. And they are candidly the folks that are going to do the work and make the execution happen. 3 to 5 years from now, what do you hope we're talking about? What do you expect that we might see as it relates to the next gen iterations of our work together?
Yeah, I mean, one, a great hope I have is just that the volume, especially the volume of personalized content, just increases dramatically. And I think the other things are being smart about the utilizing the metadata or the information that you already have, and you may not know that you have it today, but how do we use the data that already exists in platforms like Evertrue? If I know you're interested in, let's just say, golf, if I know you're interested in golf and we see that there is a threshold, a certain audience large enough that is also interested in that topic, that should then trigger someone on your team to say, hey, let's go create some content around this theme. Let's maybe use something that's more academic. So physics, once everyone's interested enough about physics, let's start creating content around physics. And then let's start thinking about that in almost an episodic manner, the same way that Netflix thinks about it. And why do we think about making things in a more episodic manner? Because if I know you're interested in something and I start to creating content in that direction and I see you are engaging with it to a certain capacity, that just means I have again, scratched the itch that this is the sort of content that you're looking for from this sort of organization. That's going to build that more deep relationship. So then you have the reason for someone reaching out, hey, we have a new physics wing that's coming out. Whereas before, if all I'm doing is knowing that you graduated with a physics degree and I'm hoping that you'll engage in this, it's a very one-sided relationship. I haven't done anything to basically honor the relationship in the time between the asks. So I think from a personal perspective, the more that we can be creating the one-to-one connections, and I think that's really achievable. That's just through how do we turn more of your student callers into student recorders? How do we get more people on campus involved in the video creation process? Because it's just so easy and accessible. Everyone can do it. That's the first piece. But then it's thinking about how do we identify those themes with tools like Evertrue, and then how do we execute on them with episodic content in platforms like Thankview to then again it's kind of like someone tells you the answer and then you feed the answer back to them. They're like, wow, you really get me.
Right.
That's
I mean, look, it's like we talk a lot about Cameo, right? And like Cameo has been this amazing rocket ship by truly creating personalized one-to-one videos from celebrities to fans. But for me to send you a Cameo, I need to know what you like. I need to know what you're interested in, or else it could fall very, very flat. If I really know what you like and what celebrity would make you the sort of happiest or get you the most jazzed, then I can get really, really creative. And I think that's the intelligence that we're hoping to bring together is, not everybody, it's hard to work and serve a 50,000, 100,000 person community and know what everybody likes. It's not realistic. But if you can sort of leverage the content to start to infer what people like, track what somebody's engaged with on Facebook, for example. And if I know that you're a huge fan of the golf team at our college, well, then of course my Cameo star is going to be the golf course, or it's going to be the golf coach, or it's going to be the captain of the golf team. And that's the individual that I want to request to send a Thankview video to you. And so it's like that kind of scalable Cameo-like experience we can do. Like, we have not done that yet. We've got the pieces in place that you could start to get at what I just said, but I think making that seamless is really what could wow the donor far deeper into the giving pyramid than the very, very top 1 or 2%.
100%. Yeah, and I think that is what we will achieve, and and that's just from the video front. I think there's so many other things that we're going to be doing in that same time frame that's going to continue to revolutionize this and make it easier for our clients to do more.
Love it. Well, JD, I would like to keep going here, but as you know, we need to hire a new CFO, and so I'm going to go from this call to getting started on that.
Wonderful.
Anything that you'd like to, I don't know, share in closing today?
I just want to say thank you to you through this whole process. We spent a lot of time on me. I'd love to turn the tables on you, perhaps for the next, Raise podcast.
Oh, guest host. I like it.
Let's see. Let's get the whole backstory.
Okay.
But no, I really appreciate spending the time being able to talk about my favorite subject myself, but also my second favorite topic, which is of course the company that we're growing here together. I'm super excited about what we're doing.
No doubt, man. Thank you for the good vibes, the energy, for taking this leap of faith, and good things lie ahead. And so I think with that, I will sign off. I would just say, hey, touch base. If you're listening to the podcast, reach out to JD on LinkedIn, shoot him a note. If you have ideas or you have questions, we're going to be, now that we've got this merger behind us, spending a whole lot more time with all of you listening. And we'd love to kind of hear what you're up to and how we might be able to help. And so with that, I think that I will sign off. JD, thank you for joining us. I'm going to just bring it home by saying that was JD Beebe, aka Toothbrush Boy from Ridgefield High. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Brent.